Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, as always, Objectively Dan, and joining me from the other side of the world, from a country that, as we've already established, does not actually exist, is Nervardia.
Hello, how are you?
The YouTube channel Nervardia. I am great. Nervardia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. So, in case you haven't heard, Nervardia is making all kinds of content on YouTube. You cover a lot of subjects. I see you talk about science. I see you talk about, women's issues. Tell us, if you had to summarize your channel in, a sentence or two, what would you say you cover on YouTube?
Well, I would say eclectic.
Yeah.
I realized the other day that I've almost got a video for almost every conversation you could have, except for music. I'm like my intros are, would show you how wonderful my ability to music is, which is not. But when it comes to things like science, I've got a really popular one of vaccines. There's one that I put on the molecule thimerosal, which is that scary autism causing compound that contains the mercury, which is completely safe, but of course people would like to tell you that it's not, but it is. That one's probably one of my more popular ones. I did a message to the person who runs the NIFB, which that's probably my most viewed one. That was shared out by Mr. Atheist, so thank you very much, Jimmy, for that. And then I've got lots of kind of silly ones, like I did a video on the testicles, a couple of muscles on the testicles, which quite a few people have
Definitely
enjoyed.
One of my favorites. That is a good one to watch. I learned things about my body that I didn't know, and that is the mark of a good video. If you have information that you just don't know before. So yeah. So in general, you're a skeptic who talks about skeptical content. You cover a wide range of stuff. If you like Truth Wanted, if you like kind of longer forms of conversations and information, I think you'll really like Nervardia. So definitely check her out after the show, folks. If you're watching this live right now in the United States, it is Valentine's Day. It is a holiday, so I don't know how many calls we're going to get tonight on this call-in show. But if you want, the lines are open right now. We got about 5 open lines, and I want you guys to call in. Come talk to us, because I know if you're watching this show live, maybe you don't have a date. Maybe you don't need a date. Maybe you're living your life. Maybe you got an anime body pillow, and you and your waifu are watching this wholesome program, and that's fine. I enjoy it. Come on and come all. We're here to talk to you about all kinds of stuff. Maybe not specifically Valentine's Day related material, but this is Truth Wanted, the call-in show where we talk about what people believe and why. So go ahead and check out that number at the corner if you're interested. And so how has your week been, everybody? What have you been up to as far as new stuff on your channel?
Well, this week's actually been a rough week for me. I went to a funeral yesterday, which was a bit sad. I didn't put anything out this week. But in regards to my channel, last week I did a science video. I've gone a bit heavy on the science. So this week I should try and do an atheist-related one. That's my aim. Somebody did tell me about a cult, which I'm looking into it, but it's really hard to find information on cults because there's a lot of, no, we're not a cult, this is why we're not a cult, and you're kind of where do I go? What situation, so it's a quite cult research heavy, which makes me appreciate Telltale a lot more.
Yes.
I already appreciated him, but he goes into a lot of effort.
Yeah, so something that I've noticed, because I was on the job hunt recently, and I just find so many MLMs, especially in the Austin area. I think being in a bigger city, you tend to find a lot of those kinds of opportunities more. But there's so many that are out there and just not a lot of content or information about these individual organizations, either because they were kind of small or people that had those experiences with them, they don't tend to write about it because they know just as much as anybody else until they get into it. And by the time they get into it, it's becomes problematic. So Yeah, the ratio of information to organizations sometimes when it comes to cults and MLMs and stuff, it's not a good matchup there. So I would love to see more content in general by people who are out there doing the kind of research. I was like, man, what if I actually accepted one of these offers and just see how far I could go so I could talk about my experiences. But it's probably not a good idea. And
No, it's a terrible
I don't recommend
idea.
that. I wouldn't recommend that to anybody, but more information on this stuff is definitely warranted as well. Actually, I have a few announcements if you don't mind me getting those out of the way real quick. And those of you who are watching, I have officially been invited and announced as a speaker for Faithless Forum this year. That's going to be the weekend of, what was it, June 18th? I can't even remember now. It's in the middle of June. You should definitely check that out. And I'm also going to be a speaker at the SSA conference that's happening at the UT Arlington this year on March 13th and 14th. I'm going to be there on the 14th doing a workshop on street epistemology. So definitely check me out there. If you're in the Dallas area or just in Texas and you want to go to an atheist thing, go to that and I'll be there and I'll talk to you and we can hang out and it'll be really cool. Also, in case you haven't heard, we have merchandise now here at Truth Wanted, and that's being hosted through Teesprings. We now have some hats, and I just got my hoodie the other day, so I'm going to wear that next week on the show with my hat. So definitely check that stuff out if you haven't. Folks, if you forgot to give your loved one a gift on Valentine's Day this year and they're mad at you, look, a Truth Wanted hoodie, who's going to be mad at you at that? Right?
Exactly.
That's the best thing you can give, in my opinion. I don't know. I would certainly be flattered if somebody got me some Truth Wanted merchandise for Valentine's Day. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Anyway, that's all the announcements I have. And so, so Nervardia, again, I'm so glad you're on the show right now. Actually, we wanted you to be on the show in December, and then we kind of had to mix up with the schedule and stuff, and now you're here with me today. And I'm just super glad about that. And you know a couple other people in the movement down there in Aussie in the other side, right? Like who you run with some other people and some other podcasts. Maybe if you want to talk about some of the other stuff that you are involved with.
Okay, so you might remember Atheist Pastor. He was on a couple of months ago. He actually runs his own channel, and every week on a Friday night we get together, have a few beers and have a few giggles. Last night I didn't get on because again, as I said, I was at a funeral yesterday, so I was not really in the mood for hopping on. But we often talk about things that are happening in Australia. For example, the religious discrimination bill, which is being pushed through Parliament. We talked about a couple of things with that. It's quite eclectic. We laugh at people who do ridiculous things because that's what we do. Last week, we did a thing on a troll that hit my GoFundMe / PayPal pool, because I'm trying to raise money for a camera. Anyway, we had this person come on and accuse me of all sorts of things. So we used that as an opportunity to poke fun at people. So
yes,
it's often quite a lot of fun. It's quite fun.
That's what trolls do. They want to get your reaction and stuff, and that's all fine. It's whatever. But going back though, actually, that religious bill that you're talking about, this religious discrimination bill, is really, really interesting. And maybe we could talk about that for a bit, because I think there's a lot of people in the United States where that's like their dream bill that they would love to get passed. You know what I mean? Because this bill, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, in the particulars of it it's giving the rights for businesses to use their religion to discriminate in a broad category of different people groups. So like LGBT peoples, if you don't want to hire somebody because they are gay, that's going to be legal if this bill passes, right?
A bit. Yeah. It's actually more in line with other religious discrimination bills in other areas of the world, like in the EU and things like that. They are, ironically enough speaking, it actually might even help people who are LGBT plus, because they're like they're going to be able to they're not going to be able to say that anymore in some cases. They're still going to allow businesses like Catholic schools and things like that to discriminate against the GRSN community, as well as non-religious people who want to get a job. Like, they're still going to be able to do that, which I think is totally not okay. But it's going to align and make the anti-discrimination bill a lot more streamlined within the country. So in some ways, it can be pretty, like, the way it's written and the way it's being reported on, it can seem like it's going to be really, really awful. But a lot of the things that they're talking about may also be not as bad. I did a video on that one as well, because I went, unfortunately, the media is paid to get clicks. And so sometimes they're going to say this, and then they'll write it as it's going to be this awful thing when it's, not. But I have read a good section of the bill. It's long, it's painful, it's legalese, but from what I read, overall, it's not as bad as what the media is saying, but at the same time, there's massive problems with it.
That's interesting, because that is different from what I thought a little bit from what we were talking about, because obviously I don't live in the country. I'm not up to date on some of those issues, but that's interesting. So maybe we could talk about that a bit more if another caller is interested. But there is a question I want to ask you in particular, Nervardia, and the reason is because obviously the joke that I have, right, is that Australia isn't real, because there's a flat Earth take out there, and depending on how serious you are, where that Australia actually doesn't exist because somehow it doesn't fit in with some people's models of the flat Earth, and so they say that all people from Australia aren't real, right? Like, that's like a hot take, and I don't even think most flat Earthers believe that, obviously, but it is a thing that's out there. So if I was a flat Earther, Nervardia, and I told you, Nervardia, I don't think you're from Australia. I think you're fake. I think you're putting on an act. You're being paid by somebody. Like, this is real. Like, what would your response be to that? If someone were just seriously asking.
I would probably play along. I would be like, of course.
Yeah,
of course I'm not real.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, check out my pay stubs.
Yeah, exactly. I live on an island, just west of New Zealand. I live on an island west of New Zealand. That's where I live.
Island west of New Zealand, right? Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
It's south of Indonesia.
So I know a story because Drew, genetically modified skeptic, was telling me he did a video. I think this was actually a few months ago now, but like, he had at one point in the video, like, obviously it takes a long time to write and film and stuff, but at one point he had a shirt on that had NASA on it. And he had several comments pointing out, like, oh, he's obviously a NASA shill. It wasn't even talking about flat Earth stuff or anything, but it's just because he had the NASA shirt on, that was enough to kind of provoke people, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, like, man, I should, one of these days, I'm going to wear a NASA thing, or I'm going to do something like, and just freak people out just to see, where we can go with that. But anyway, we have quite a few number of calls here, actually. I'm surprised we got a couple here who want to talk to us on this fine Valentine's Day evening. Are you ready to get down to some calls and see what the people have to say?
Sounds good.
All right,
and cool. Also, happy Valentine's Day to everybody who's in the real section of the planet. So
yeah, the real section of that. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. So anyway, let's go ahead and look at this call here. I want to get to Stan in Philadelphia. Hey, Stan in Philadelphia, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan. Hello, Nervardia.
How are you?
Hey. I wanted to say Happy New Year's, Dan. This is the first time I've called during this year, so Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's been a little while, Stan. I'm glad you've called in again. I just want to point out, so our call screener had put in the note here for your call that says wants to defend gold diggers, and that's like, is that what you want to do? Like, is that accurate?
That is 100% accurate,
all right,
my friend.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about that. What?
Let's do it.
I don't even know where to start. Just tell me your thing. Let's go from there.
Okay, all right, yeah. So this is a spicy one. I've had for a while, and every time I introduce it, people have very strong reactions to it. But I think that gold digging should be like anything else. When it's between two consenting adults, then it's fine, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, people, gold diggers, like, in case someone doesn't know the term, is a person, usually a woman, is a stereotype, that who would partner up with someone because they feel they are well off financially, and are partnering just for that rather than love, or attraction, like physical attraction. And I think that's just a perfectly valid reason to sign up with anyone, right? I mean, in this day and age, money goes a lot farther than muscles, right? That would be hundreds or thousands of years ago. That would be the main attraction. Like, can this person defend me? Will he be able to keep our family safe? Right? Before you did that with muscles, now you can do that with money and get other people with muscles to do that for you. It gives you opportunity, right? Like, that's the whole point when you're looking for an attractive mate, like someone who can have the best opportunity to pass on your genes. Right?
Sure.
Why not? But it relies on consent. That's the important part, right? So if two people go into a relationship, right, and they both understand, like, one partner is here for the money. As long as you have the money, then I will be here for you, right? I will do my part in this relationship. But if it's a lie, right? If one person is saying that, like, I love you, when that is not the case, that's when it becomes a problem.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess I get from the sense of, like, oh, yeah, if it's between two consenting adults, they should be able to live out the relationship the way that they want to. And if money is involved, then, just let them have it. Yeah, I understand that take. I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me, and I want to hear Nervardia's take on this too, is, like, what happens when if someone develops that relationship to the point where it becomes a dependency? Because I feel like that can easily be something that could be exploited to some. Like, for example, if you have a relationship with somebody and they're paying for your college education, right? Then and you want to finish that degree, even if you don't feel comfortable with the relationship anymore, there might be a pressure there to continue that relationship because you're kind of dependent on them for something that you really want. And to me, that that's where it can kind of come into the harm territory, because there's a power dynamic there that's not in control. When we talk about different power dynamics in, like, BDSM relationships, for example, we know that outside the bedroom, hopefully that relationship is symmetrical in that everybody involved is still consenting, but before they enter the door and after they leave, like, everything's consenting except what happens in the bedroom, right? But this is something that's happening outside the bedroom. This is happening in people's daily lives. And so that's the first question / distinction I would want to know is, like, how would we handle issues like that if there's a way to do that?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I had to swap my mic over.
We can hear you just fine.
Awesome. So my problem with that one is that it is also open for huge amounts of abuse.
Yeah.
So you've got things like financial abuse, which is something that is quite problematic, as you can understand, because once somebody is in a financially abusive relationship, they end up being unable to leave this abusive relationship because, they don't have the money to go anywhere. Also, Dan, what you said, like, if the person's paying a person to go through college, which in my opinion isn't kind of a crazy thought, because, we have an affordable education system over here.
And it doesn't have to be just college too. I just want to point out, like if you have a kid, right, and you're supplementing part of your income with a relationship with somebody, that becomes, that's like a hostage situation almost. It's like, because you wouldn't want to put the safety of your kid out of the line. And, like, I maybe this is like a bunch of outliers, and maybe I'm thinking this happens with everybody. I don't know. I'm not in, like, the gold digging community. So, like, if somebody has a relationship with a gold digger or vice versa and wants to call in and tell us more about that, I'd totally be down to know, because I don't know. I'm making assumptions about something I don't know too much about. But anyway, go ahead and continue what you were saying.
Yeah, so sometimes when a person has a change, it doesn't even have to be financial, it could be a physical change, it could be something. A lot of the times that when that power dynamic shifts, the relationship falls apart. I mean, how many times have you heard of people who've had a partner who's always been overweight, and then all of a sudden this person's gone, all right, I'm going to lose weight, and then the next thing you know, their marriage of 25 years has fallen apart because one of the partners has lost weight, and that's a problem, because of course, if the only thing that's tying you to this person is their finances, what happens if they lose that finance?
Yeah.
So if you want to be a gold digger, and it's again a consensual situation, I'm okay with that. I just think it's completely fraught with a lot of things, and it's very open to abuse, in my opinion.
What do you think about that, Stan?
I think my ideas match up with everything you said. I mean, I think no person can consent to abuse, right? So abuse, no matter what form that comes in, whether it be physical, emotional, sexual, or financial, right? I think in a gold digging relationship, and okay, let me make something clear. I am not wealthy. I would not be the target of any of this.
You're not doing this so you can tell people, hey, ladies, come on down, right? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, unless they're really into ramen noodles, then yes, I am the man.
Maybe they have a sodium deficiency that they need to take care of. Yeah.
This is me from my outside perspective, right? So I would say that, like, in a more consensual relationship, the one partner would be, applying the money, right? And then the other one would be, supplying whatever it is that the first partner wants, all right? And it doesn't have to be just sexual. It could just be really emotional support, right? Like, some people are just lonely, right? Like, that's the thing. And they can't, for whatever reason, find a partner, or feel like they can't, even if they might be able to, right? And so, they may decide to get into this relationship. And you know what? I've heard, right, from sex workers, right? I've heard from sex workers that, it's entirely possible that a man can, come into their apartment, right, pay them money, right, and say, like, I don't want to be touched, I'm not looking here for that. I just want to talk,
Yes.
So those things are real, right? And so if that's the kind of relationship, and again, everyone is consenting, right? No one's being forced into it, then it's fine, or is being deceptive about it, right? Now, it can easily tip into financial not domination, that's a different thing, financial abuse, because money is inherently coercive, right? Like, we all know this.
Yes.
It's inherently, it has its own power, right?
Yeah.
And so, you can become reliant on it, and I think that's sort of a risk, that you're taking, but at the same time, that can happen at any point in time, right? So two people can get into a relationship, right? And the man or woman can lose their job, right? And then that other person has that power, right? Like, if they still have their career, they have that power over them. And that's happened before. Plenty of marriages are falling apart because of this, right? Because now I have that power over you, right? And apparently I'm going to use it badly and responsibly. You could have gotten into a relationship for love, but it could have ended up badly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like, this relationship, you're skipping the middleman, not pretending that this is it for love. This is for one specific reason, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and there is something to that in the sense because, the history of marriage, if you look at it from an anthropological perspective, a lot of it, wasn't really based on love in a lot of parts of history. It's based on property rights, like who is going to inherit my property when I die, and making sure that I have a family that can be taken care of itself. I mean, even women in this country and other places weren't even allowed to have property. And that was because, the expectation was they would be married to somebody who could manage that, and, finances and stuff like that. So yeah, I can see how, any relationship you go into, right, there's going to be that risk for sure. I guess but the only counterpoint I can think of to that though is if you have the explicit expectations that, hey, this person is going to help me financially in these specific areas, then like you're defining where those dependencies can lay upon. And maybe the solution is don't go into gold digging if you really, really need the money. I don't know. But then it's kind of like, well, that's kind of part of the fun. I don't know. Here's the thing, the magical thing about the internet is there's a community out there. There is some sort of forum where they have these conversations all the time. There are some gold digging forums out there right now that I'd be really interested to see how these relationships are handled on a day-to-day basis, because unless you're making like contracts, I don't know, like when money is directly involved and that's like the big part of the relationship, I don't know how a lot of that gets handled.
Actually,
and also, sorry,
contracts can be involved. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to on that point, like you can actually like stipulate this, and in so many situations, like this is what I will provide, and this is what I expect of you. And I don't know, I just feel like in a way it's just an extremely honest, form of relationship.
Yeah.
Like, there's no imaginary expectations, Again, I've never experienced this, but like, I don't know, it seems to make sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I will say like, the image of sex workers in this country in particular, hopefully are changing. I hope shows like this help to change that image. I remember seeing Matt first kind of talk about this for the first time, actually, like we've traditionally had this idea of people who are in sex work are desperate for it or are doing it because they need the money, because this and that, but we now are having this image of, there are sex workers who are doing it just because they want to, just because this is something they're choosing to actively do. And if that's the case with gold digging relationships, then yeah, I can get behind that. My concern always first is everybody involved safe? Is everybody involved like going to be open to something? And that's where I would have the first kind of questions. But let's go to Nervardia here, because you had something to say.
Yeah, well, the problem with gold digging relationships, if you base your entire relationship on this one particular thing, and this is not just for money, it could be for anything. If your relationship is solely centered around one thing, so it's like putting all your eggs in the one basket, and all we have to do is go back 12 years to the global financial crisis, where there were people who were earning a significant amount of money overnight, lost everything. So if your entire relationship is based on this one person earning a lot of money, and then the next day nothing, what's going to happen to your relationship?
But what would you say though, Nervardia, for people who who mothers or fathers, who work at home, who don't have a job, who rely on the income of their spouse, like that's all over the place. I mean,
that's always a danger as well. But but in that case, obviously I'm not putting down any home parents at all, because it's a fantastic job. It's underappreciated, and yeah, we need as a society, obviously, to recognize that. But what I'm saying is, if you've gone into a relationship knowing that all you're going to do is be there because you're there for the money, but not for the person's sense of humor, being attracted to them, the love that you have. If it's just simply I'm there because I need you to buy me, basically, then you won't have that basis. You might have that basis after a while. You might actually end up falling in love with somebody, but I think you need to base a relationship on something a little bit less materialistic.
Well, what would you say? Money. I'm just curious though, because there are some people who entire relationship are based on casual sex, or casual hookups, and I don't see that it is any more materialistic in the same sense as, look, they want one thing, and that's the other person's body, and if that person loses control of their body in some way, and they change their body in ways that isn't pleasing to the other person, they're not going to be interested in having that. Would you say that that's a different case, or would you?
I would say it'd be a similar case. As I was saying, you can base your relationship on whatever works for you. I mean, I'm not I'm not a qualified sexologist or anything
Sure.
like this. This is just me shooting the breeze.
Mhm.
But I think you need to also base a relationship on something other than like something more than one thing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because if
Yeah.
that basket breaks, then the basis of your relationship is weak.
Yeah.
Basically,
It's open to harm in some
yeah,
form.
it's more open to harm.
Yeah,
So
I see that for sure. Well, this is an interesting call. What were we gonna say, Stan? Yeah.
I just want to be sure to say that, like, I am not advocating this. I'm just saying that, like, if a person were to get in such a relationship, that, I don't know, like, again, if it's consenting, then it really shouldn't be derided, and it's really no one else's business if everyone there is agreeing to what's happening.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I just
agree
think
with you on that too. Yeah,
fraught with danger. I just think it's fraught with danger, and that's just my experience. Not because I'm a gold digger, because I'm not, but just my experience in my own personal relationships is, if you base your whole relationship on one particular thing, you're not likely.
Yeah.
Like it's more likely to fail.
Yeah. I see a lot of. Yeah, there's aspects to relationships that are hard to maintain if it's based on one thing, and that's true. But yeah, I think, to Stan's point, all the three of us talking here we're not saying that you shouldn't have a gold digger relationship because we just think it's wrong. Like we'll never go to that level, but we're just kind of exploring the kind of inner aspects of what that relationship would be like and how we can kind of, I guess, ethically navigate that from kind of a humanist perspective as best we can. And I still have questions, but that's definitely something I would want to know more about. And definitely from people who've had those kinds of relationships, please tell me about your experiences, or email the show, or tell me, because I would love to know a bit more about that. What a fascinating question. Thanks for calling in about that, Stan. And I hope, I hope to hear from you again about that more. Yeah, like, it's cool that we live in a time now where we can talk more openly about different kinds of relationships and how that might flow, especially on Valentine's Day, no less. Yeah. What a perfect day to have those kinds of conversations. But I want to go to our next call here, and I want to talk to Harry. Harry in Yakima, Washington. I think that's how you say it. Sounds pretty cool. Hey, Harry, how's it going?
It is going good. Do you remember last time I called?
Harry, when was the last time that you called?
Oh, my goodness, where you had Dr. Daryl Ray on. And,
Daryl Ray.
What do I do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so background is wife kind of lost her faith and kind of fell into new agey stuff, and I had to come out as an atheist, and she got really mad at me and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was right. Just, I let her have time. And in fact, I figured it was great because, hold on a minute, hold on. There's going to be a little bit of interference because...
Okay. All right.
Oh, there we go. Because I'm coming into the other room because she's sitting here and she was watching it on the TV.
Oh, nice. Well, cool.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
So here's Charlie. I just want to introduce her.
Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Welcome to the other side.
Valentine's. Yes. Happy Valentine's.
What a romantic time for you guys to be spending together today on this Valentine's Day. That's great.
And you have excellent taste.
Yeah, I'm glad you could spend it with us.
So long story short, I mean, it really worked out. He was right. He gave her time. We had a local group, and I kind of said, hey, come on, let's go meet some other atheists. And she just said, yeah, you're not evil people.
That's right. And let me tell you, if your husband is watching this show, that means he's a good person. That's a fact. Scientists can tell you that. They'll pull out graphs and all kinds of charts. That's the thing.
Yeah,
so.
I'm finishing my degree in science.
What ended up happening for me was that because he gave me the time, I was able to start questioning what I believed.
Mm-hmm.
I started getting in with V. Neil or V. LaBanca and Eric, and started watching you guys, and it's just like, okay, now I'm starting to ask questions, and then it's like, I have a rich source here of somebody to talk to about it. So then I started talking to my husband, and it has just drawn us closer. And I guess that's why we wanted to share with you guys. Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Because it drew us closer.
That just warms my heart. I'm so glad that I could at least be a little part of your guys' story. And wow, I'm so happy because, you know, sometimes these conversations happen and people just completely separate and they do not reconcile. And I'm glad that he was able to have the patience with you and give you the time to kind of think about things and, you know, just kind of figure out where you're at. And if you're going to change your mind about something, that he's going to still be there to talk to you about it. So, yeah, good for you. I'm so glad that you're here with us now. Yeah, and so, like, what was the kind of biggest transition for you? What was the kind of big turning point for you to kind of give up some of those new age beliefs to kind of just calling yourself an atheist?
Well, what ended up happening for me was I started talking with Dee, and you know, she.
Well, there's your first problem. I'm just kidding.
Well, she basically talked about her whole situation where she went through this too. And so I started emailing back and forth with her, and I started being able to start making the transition from, okay, this isn't a God out there. This is a psychological aspect of me, and I could call forth that psychological aspect of me. So it became sort of like a bridge for me.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, like, you know, this concept of God that we had, I know for myself, like, once I kind of realized it was all internal, and it was just kind of myself kind of justifying, you know, my belief. Like, things just started to be more clear. But it didn't work for me until I started to have conversations with other people about it. And I think that's a really key aspect for people. Because if you don't know anybody that's an atheist, if you don't know anybody that has answers to a lot of the questions that people have, like, you're just kind of stuck, you know? And if you don't know where to look on the internet or anywhere else, like, it's just kind of confusing. So I'm glad that you had somebody in your life that you could talk to about it. And now you can talk to other people and they can say, hey, I know this atheist that can, you know, probably answer this question. And then, you know, it just kind of keeps going from there. So really good for you guys. I'm so glad. And thank you so much for calling to the show to tell me, because like I said, that just warms my heart. So
It is very lovely to hear that. A lot of people do lose really important people in their lives over something as almost as inconsequential as what you believe in.
Yeah.
And it's sad and devastating because I've got plenty of friends who are Christian. I've got plenty of polytheist friends, and I would not give up my friendships with these people in a million years because I'm atheist and they aren't. Like, that's almost cult-like behavior, really. You know, it's causing a bubble, and bubbles aren't good.
Yeah,
you need to be able to challenge yourself.
It's a black and white mentality that can really ruin people's relationships. Like, I don't have to see eye to eye on everything with people, but if I can get along, that's a start. That's a start. And yeah, there's important issues, really important issues that I want the friends and family in my life to understand and recognize. But I also have to know that that's going to take time. It doesn't just happen with one conversation. Usually it happens over a course of a long period of time. And like you were saying, Harry, sometimes you just got to be patient with people. Let people process and figure it out.
How long back?
Right? So I heard two people there.
I'll tell you one thing. If he'd been really pushy with me originally, it would have driven that wedge.
Yeah, I believe it.
I was already giving up one faith, had lost a lot of people, and it would have terrified me that I was losing my relationship. And it would have been one of those self-fulfilling prophecies, because I would have ruined it.
Yes, absolutely. Nervardia has a question, I think.
How
long? May I ask, how long did it take for this sort of transition to happen? Like, was it over a couple of weeks, months, a year? I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I mean, I was starting to lose my faith 10 years ago. And I struggled and struggled and struggled, but I was so like, oh, I am not going to even conceive of the possibility that I might go to hell, because that's what I was raised with my whole life. But as far as like making the decision, okay, I'm leaving the church, which happened in August of 2018, to now, it's over a year period of time.
Wow. It takes a while for people, and some people don't realize that because some people figure it out quicker than others. You know, some people kind of process it, and then some people, like I know myself, it took me a little while. And so, I'm just glad you're here. So glad that we can talk to you guys. And yeah, absolutely. So please, I feel free to give me updates on any changes. And by the way, wait, can I ask one more thing before I let you guys go? I didn't catch Harry, your wife's name, but to your wife, I want to know, like, how has your family reacted to this, or have you told them at all, like your friends and family?
Well, both my side of the family is essentially dead.
My mother, who essentially was a home church, I guess you could call her cult leader, she died. The rest of my family has rejected me.
I'm sorry. That's awful.
Yeah, that's tough.
Well, they're also like thousands of miles away. They're in Oklahoma and we're out in Washington. So.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And we've developed a community out here. We have a little tiny community building up here in Yakima of atheists, and they've become sort of like my family away from my family.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, I'm really glad because community is important too.
TV in Seattle.
Yes.
Not Seattle, Portland.
Portland, sorry.
Yeah,
Portland.
You'll have to check them out whenever they go over there for sure. Excuse me. And if you ever come down to Texas, you know you can always come down by the ACA. You know, I'll be happy to talk to you any Friday night you come in. So anyway, guys, I do want to get to some other callers here, but thanks so much again for calling in to the show. I really appreciate you guys for giving me an update on that, because that's just nice. I just like that a lot. It just warms my heart. And people change their minds, folks. People really do change their minds. Yeah, sometimes you just got to give it time. And if you're using the right strategies, the right communication strategies, where you're not putting people off, where you're not, calling them stupid or just completely dismissing them, meeting them where they're at, the real change can happen. Real change can really, really happen. So anyway, I want to go ahead and go to another call here, because we got a surprising amount of calls here on Valentine's Day night. I did not expect this many calls so far, but we got quite a few people here. I want to get next to, and the call screener has put your name as Eric. Is it Eric from Alabama? Am I saying your name right?
It's Eric.
It is Eric. Okay, so they just put two E's here on accident. Or is it spelled that way?
It's Derek with a D.
Oh, it's Derek. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay. All right, so Derek from Alabama is calling. What's up, Derek?
Yeah, so I called actually late last year, talked to you about using some of your clips in a class that I teach.
Yes.
When I was talking about conspiracy theories.
Yes, and Derek and I did email about that afterwards, folks. And I found out that he did use some of my clips for the class.
Oh.
And at first we were trying to get it so that I could actually live stream into the class to talk. I ended up kind of being too late in communication for that to happen, but I'm really glad you at least got to use those clips for that. So what's up, Derek? What's going on?
Well, I'm teaching the same class again this semester, and I'm mixing up the topics of what I get to talk about, and one of them is going to be talking about cults and kind of the psychological aspect of drawing people in.
Okay.
And I was wanting to kind of get some of your perspectives from people you've talked to, some research that you've done about what is it about cults that lures people in and then kind of traps them in.
Well, I've definitely seen some stuff, but I know Nervardia has actually covered some of this on her channel a little bit herself. So I want to get Nervardia the chance to kind of speak on some of that.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
better?
We can hear you.
Sorry, I'm having trouble. Okay, having
That's
trouble
okay.
with my laptop at the moment. It's not charging on one of the ports, so I have to keep swapping them over. Okay, so in regards to cults, I've been interested in cults for donkey's 8 years, and I would probably say the first place to go would be Telltale's channel, because I'm sure you've heard of Telltale. He's pretty big, if you have not.
He's been on the show before. Yeah.
Yep. Derek, do you know of Telltale? Sorry, what was that?
But Nervardia, what are some of your specific, insights on how, what is drawing people into cults? Like,
what what draws people? I would say, first of all, the first thing would be being born into one, I think is the biggest draws for a cult. But other things is they're really good at lying. So the adage of a good lie contains a kernel of truth is very true. So, for example, you were talking about MLMs earlier, and I actually was roped into an MLM. So, a multi-level marketing, if you're not sure what it is, it basically is a way to lose money. It's very good at losing money. But they do actually tell you, you have fantastic earning potential, and you do. When I started off, I was earning significant amount of money. But they lie by admission. Or once, so that's where they get you. They lie about what it's about. You know, you look at Scientology, for example. All they are is about like an alternative to being able to go and get yourself energetically cleanse, which is makes no sense from a scientific sense of the point of view. But you know, if you're introduced into New Age stuff, that makes sense. But once they've got their hooks into you, they don't let you go. A lot of the time, another good set of reasons why people get hooked is love bombing. You know, when you walk into a community and they're just the most loving, welcoming, kind, caring people, and you feel really special. And that feeling really special is a really, really great way to get their hooks into you as well, because you think to yourself, oh, these people are amazing and they're so kind. Like, they can't do anything wrong because they're just so nice. And then the next thing you know, you've cut off all your friends because all of your friends and family don't believe what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So that's another major ways of being hooked in. Because I went to a Catholic school, and we actually did, excuse me, we did a video, a short course on cults and how to pick a cult, which was really, really interesting. And that was one of the things that they pointed out, is that love bombing is one of the things, you know, really strong attention onto you.
Absolutely.
And
you never join a cult when you're having the best day of your life, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's usually not what's happening. And it's you know, people have this idea, you know, they're confused because they think, oh, you just show up one day and you become part of this cult. But that's not what happens either. You know, it's people who, it's a funnel. It's people who slowly get drawn in over time. You know, maybe they go up to one meetup first and they meet some people, and then they hang out with some of these folks, and then they learn a little bit more about, you know, the ideologies and what's going on, and then eventually they start to integrate themselves into the culture, into the structure of particular organizations, depending on what the cult is like. So, you know, when cult members are talking about other people in their cults, they're talking about friends. Sometimes they're talking about family. They're not just talking about other members of a particular organization. When I'm talking about folks at the ACA here, you know, I know a lot of these folks. They're not just people that I volunteer with. A lot of these are my friends. Now, I'm not saying the ACA is a cult, obviously, because anywhere you go, if you're working with people, if you're volunteering with people, I mean, you're going to eventually get to know people. But that's how it happens. It's a combination of, like you said, that love bombing, where people are offering you security. They're offering you a structured life. A lot of times, you know, cults aren't usually totally chaotic. Usually they have a system which you integrate yourself into. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at someone that you know, I'm thinking of a friend of mine that I unfortunately don't talk to anymore, and partially because they were roped into probably a cult. I'm not entirely sure exactly who they were, but from what I saw, they just started going to church, and the next thing they announced on Facebook, going, "I'm starting a new Facebook. If you didn't make it through, you know, you're not my friend anymore." And it's sort of, if somebody goes into a group of people who are like, you know, they start quiet, they start small. You know, they might say one thing that's kind of crazy, but you're like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. Like going back to Scientology, you hear about the cleansing of your spirit.
Piecemeal. It's piecemeal.
Yeah.
You don't get it all at once, right?
Yeah, and then they just drip feed you slightly more crazy things, slightly more crazier things, slightly more crazier things, until you get to the point where it's like, by the way, you have aliens living in your body. But by then, you've done all of the lead up to where aliens living in your body does not sound crazy.
Yeah.
And that's another example of how cults work, is that, you know, if I came up to you and said, come join Scientology, there's aliens living in your body, you'd be like, go away.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Totally. Does that match up to what you understand about cults, Derek?
Yeah, it's a bit more information than I knew, but like that, the little bit at a time, not just dropping it all on you at once, definitely makes sense. It kind of, with a lot of religions being born into it, is kind of one of the big ways of ending up in it.
Yeah, and love bombing is probably one of the most intense and probably the most effective, in my opinion, sort of situations. Like, also with my experience with that MLM that I was part of, they basically like, as soon as I was recruited, they whipped me away to do a 2-week learning course. So for hours and hours on, and for 2 weeks, I got pummeled with all the information, and a lot of it was legal stuff and stuff about the product, but also it was things like, you know, every time somebody said, how do you feel? You had to say, I'm terrific. So they were telling you how to talk, say your talk, and how to say, you know, how you must talk. And it was really interesting at that time when we started going, how are you? Oh, I'm terrific. One of the guys said, are we a part of a cult? And the lady was like, no, we're not part of a cult, which we were, actually, looking back in hindsight. Also, another really good way of being able to tell if a cult is a cult is having outside sources say this is a cult, and having the leader say, we're not a cult. For example, Teal Swan, Andy the Fellows, he was a part of the Teal Swan crew.
Yes.
He was last week
on my program this last week. In case you haven't watched that, you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. He's a real sweetheart.
What's up, Derek?
I was just saying, I just finished the Teal Swan episode with Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was like, we're not a cult, and then ran through a list different to the Bite model. I can't remember what it's called. And she was like, I'm not a cult. And then Telltale went, oh, actually.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, another thing is, you know, if people outside of a group is saying you're a cult, there's a good possibility you could be behaving like a cult, like a group could be behaving like a cult. So
yes, unless it's completely unfounded. But, you know, one thing I do want to point out, and then Derek, I'll let you say your piece too, is that a persuasion strategy, and there's a specific word for it that escapes my mind, but that people will use, is they're sort of steelmanning themselves when they're faced with criticism. One of the first things, if you're like, oh, somebody said I was in a cult, well, I'm going to go talk to the leader of this thing and see, like, ask him, hey, am I in a cult? And of course the leader's going to deny it. And not only that, they're going to supply you with arguments, and they're going to supply you with materials on apologetics of sorts to use. MLMs will do this particularly well. Every single MLM that exists out there right now has a line that they'll spew out. If you ask them, is this a cult or is this a scam? They're prepared for this. They know that. And they're going to give you that material so that when other people ask you, you can just spit the comeback, right? Without really thinking about it. So,
and a lot of the times is, if you have any questions or if you have any doubts, it's on you. Yeah, you know, we're a perfect organization. If you have any doubts, you're wrong, you're, you know, that sort of thing.
There's a fear for doubting. Yeah. What's up, Derek?
So this is probably a question no one can really answer except the people that are leading the cults. But I'm just curious as if these people create these organizations knowing they're cults, or if they just end up following that model inadvertently and then just reinforces it that way.
That's an interesting question. I want to talk about it. I'm going to go ahead and let you go here, Derek, so that we can kind of discuss that question and get to the next call. But thanks again, Derek, for calling in about this idea of cults. So yeah, like, do people start this stuff knowing that they're cults? I think that's contextual. There's definitely people who start stuff to scam people. Peter Popoff, Popoff, right?
Popoff, yeah.
That's it's such a weird name. I just can't remember exactly what it is. But like, that dude was definitely scamming people, like 100%.
Joseph Smith.
I don't think he believed for a second that he had the Holy Spirit in him and was giving people stuff. Folks like David Koresh, I don't know. That's a little more of a gray area to me. I think maybe he really thought he was the Messiah, and it doesn't help when a lot of these people that are leaders definitely have diagnosed mental illness that isn't properly treated. That probably means that they might believe some of this stuff, but it's going to work on a case-to-case thing. I don't know if we can say really everything is a scam or everything they believe, right? I think it becomes more complicated.
Yeah, like Joseph Smith, the guy who studied Mormons, it was Joseph Smith, wasn't it? He was a con artist.
Yes.
He was like So there's definitely people out there, maybe not. And maybe there's some people out there who didn't even think that their influence was going to get so big. And then all of a sudden they've got a cult following. It's like, okay.
MLMs, I'm not too sure. I would have to imagine if you're at the top of an MLM and you're starting this stuff, you know exactly what's happening because you're handling the financials and you know what's going on. But there is I'm going to say this and people might give me flack for this, but there is kind of a cult of entrepreneurship. A little bit. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people who would say, if you're just an entrepreneur and you just put yourself out there, man, you're going to make it and have success, but only if you try really hard and if you do X, Y, and Z. And that gets exploited especially well in MLMs because they sell you this idea of, hey, you're running your own business. Like this is all you. What you get out of it is what you put into it, And so they exploit this kind of capitalist, really American capitalist narrative of just work hard and you'll succeed. And not to say that, of course, people in history haven't worked hard and succeeded because of the fruits of their efforts. But, if you take that narrative and you put it into something that's just not going to work feasibly, like the model is just broken on the face of it with an MLM, right? Then it's just not going to work. So.
Yeah, and also that attitude of if you work your butt off, you're going to get far is ridiculous because if you're working your butt off like 60 hours a week, earning $4 an hour, like that's not possible. You can't succeed at that pay level.
Yeah, people don't have the same opportunities to kind of do that kind of stuff, which is interesting. But yeah, thanks again, Derek, for calling in about that. Really fun stuff. We still got some more calls, and I want to try to get to all of you guys before then. So if you're still waiting, just hang on, and we'll eventually get to you here. Thanks for calling in on this Valentine's Day evening. I want to go to next Paul in Savannah, Georgia. I think has
Hello, Paul. How are you?
Hey, Paul, what's going on?
Hello, how are you?
Doing all right, Paul. How about yourself?
I could be doing better, I feel.
Okay. So I have a note here from the call screener that said you had some recent life-changing experiences.
Yes, I've had, in the last 5 months, I've had 4 heart attacks.
4 heart attacks?
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Wow.
And it started off with three angioplasties to try to stop the clotting, but they all occluded and fell apart. So I ended up having to go through open heart surgery as the last resort.
Holy.
Now,
Wow.
During the first couple of cardiac events, I looked to my Bible, I looked to friends and family. But the night when the doctor came and said, we're going to have to keep you and you're going to have open heart surgery. And I remember saying to myself, like, wow, this is bad. So the night before I went to sleep in the hospital, I've gone up a bunch of meds. And I have to include the fact that I am a paranoid schizophrenic. and my medication was getting a little. I wasn't taking the psych meds, so I started saying to myself, if I survive this open heart surgery, that I am no more taking any psych meds, and I want to let my mind be its mind. Just because being on psychotropic medication for 24, 25 years, I've forgotten who I was inside before all of this. People used to tell me, you were wild, you never want to listen, or you always have the answers. So that night, before I lay down, I talked to what I felt like was the God that I served. And I told him, I said, if I wake up tomorrow after this surgery, I will no longer know you. I want you to know that. I want to leave you from my previous world. I need a new world without you, because the world with you has been chaotic and full of pain. So, needless to say, I pulled through. And in the recovery room, everyone's like, oh, God is great, God is great. And I'm just looking at everyone like, please, like, disappear. I wanted everybody to just disappear so I can just be alone with my new self.
Paul, do you identify as an atheist?
I don't know just yet.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't. It's kind of hard to say, because I don't really believe in a whole lot of things. Some people say, okay, there's no evidence for God. There's no proof that you can't exist, that he does. It's a lot of things that I don't understand when it comes down to proving and disproving the existence of God. And I don't put God as, oh, he's the sun or he's energy. I use the man-made term as God. And I no longer serve a God. But it's been really hard to making that transitioning with my friends and especially with my family.
Yeah.
I lost my job. Due to my condition. They're putting me on disability, and I'm refusing to use my psych med because I see life so much clearer. And the fact that I took, and also the fact that I took, sugar out of my diet as well.
Okay. Paul, can I ask a question? I don't want to sound like I'm being a bit rude or condescending, but does your psychologist know you've gone off these medications?
I was going to ask that as well. Okay, yeah.
Yes. And you're doing it under so you're doing it under medical supervision.
Yes, he told me that I needed to take it simply because it would help me interact better with society.
Yeah,
but I realized
that should have been the first thing I asked. But yeah, absolutely. I was curious to know.
Yes, I interact better with society now that I have a sense of myself. Just because I don't talk to someone, I just don't share the same views as they. And it can say hi and bye, but when they start talking about the goodness of the God and all, I just kind of like, okay, see you later, bye bye. Oh, you don't want to talk about God? Like, nah, I'm good. So it's just.
The thing is, it's good that it's working for you and that you're doing it under the guise of a medical doctor. But if you weren't, I would be very concerned because I have ADHD. I also take psychotropic drugs to help me work along with my brain to make my life work. And if I don't take that and take them, I do actually not function very well. So, and I actually have quite mild ADHD. I don't have it nearly as bad as some other people I know. And yeah, I ended up running out of the script, and my psychologist was on holiday, so I actually stopped taking it for a while, and my life for a bit was a bit chaotic. So I do recommend anyone who is taking psychotropic drugs to please stick with it. And if you want to wean yourself off, that's perfectly okay, but make sure you're doing it under the guise of a medical practitioner, because those things are there to help your life. But I'm really glad to hear that your life seems to have improved. And
Yes.
in that case, I would probably say, because I also work with people with disability, you probably needed a medication review as well. So I just wanted to put out that little bit of a disclaimer out there for those people, is just, if you're not working very well on a medication, go back to your doctor and say, this isn't working very well for me. Is there anything else that we can do? Because medication reviews need to be done almost on a yearly basis. And there's some people I know who've been on the same medication for 14 years and never had a medication review. So.
Right. So, and it's been about 9 months since I've had my last dose of my psychotic medication. So I'm dealing with, to give you a brief synopsis about how I feel when I do take them. When I take my medication, I believe almost everything that you tell me. I'm very submissive. You can tell me the sky is green, and just because I trust you so much, I believe that it is green. And when I am off my medication, I do more critical thinking on my own. I tend to look at the world as if it was created for everyone and everything, and not just one species. So sometimes the extreme that I get when I'm off my meds, when I just get off my meds, I cry. I go to the park, and people have their dogs on leashes, and I cry and I apologize to the dog. Like, I'm so sorry they got you like this. It's so bad. You should be free. But I don't set them free. I just feel like human has just owned everything. And it's just, it saddens me sometimes to feel like we are so superior, but I really feel like we are superior in our rights. I feel like in every aspect of every element, there is a part of it that is just special, even with the planets.
Okay.
I feel like Earth. Okay.
I want to focus in on something just a little bit, Paul, if you don't mind me asking. I want to kind of go back to the question of God, of, because there's people who call in and they tell me, or at least have told me in the past, like, I prayed for something to happen and I prayed to God and this thing happened for me and therefore I believe, right? So their belief is is based on, an experience that they've had that they can point to and say, okay, because of this experience, this confirmed to me this is thing. And this is interesting because you're telling me you had almost the opposite experience. You prayed to God, and because of a lack of an answer, you determined that God either isn't real or isn't what you thought it was, at least. And so your perspective on that issue is kind of changed. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So, I'm just interested because what would you say to folks who have these experiences, who say, I had this thing and then it was confirmed to me that, God spoke to me or God did this. You're not having these kinds of experiences. And obviously, Nervardia and I aren't really having these experiences either. But, how did you change from that? Because it sounds at least to me that it's not the first time you've ever prayed. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But, you seem to have had a communication with God before. At least that's the reason why you talked to him. So how did that change? What's the nature of that?
Things had gotten really bad for me, really bad. And I used to turn on the news just so I can hear and see things worse than the situation that I was in. But I also realized that, those are human beings and they're going through things, as a whole. I was like, they're supposed to be a God to change all this. And I just felt like I had waited long enough and there was no answer. And I can't sit here and knock at a door that no one answers. And I'm not going to just go in the door because it's not my house. Anything can happen,
Yeah.
Just walk away
So
And
it's kind of like the problem of evil was a big thing for you, right? That evilness exists in the world and something wasn't being done about it. And also just in your personal life, things weren't happening for you in the way that you
And
had.
Paul, I also want to say suffering is relative. So, I live in an amazing non-existent country, but I have my down days, I have my bad days. And the fact that somebody else is having a worse time, yes, is there, and we need to accept and understand that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that you yourself are having a shitty day.
yes,
Like something that I go through, a shitty day for me would be heaven for someone else. And I accept and understand that, but I still also need to accept and understand that I'm still having a shitty day.
yes, I do.
I think we don't recognize that enough, and it is kind of almost victim blaming, I think. It's sort of like, oh, well, you can't have a shitty day because, you've got food in your stomach. And it's like, yeah, well, I just got beaten up by someone. Like, that's a shitty thing to happen to you. I'm sorry for swearing, by the way.
Yeah.
That's all right. This is not a family program. I've
yeah. So I can see where you're coming from. Just try not to feel that guilt of having, there's other people who are going through worse. I should feel better in my life, because that's a terrible way of thinking, in my opinion, because you need to also respect the fact that you yourself are having a terrible day.
So I recently moved into a home, and my next door neighbor, she came to introduce herself, and she said, "What kind of work do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a peer specialist, for a mental hospital." So she said, "Peer specialist, what is that?" I said, "Well, I deal with people who, have schizophrenia, bipolarism, and schizoaffectivism." And so she says, "Oh, so she's I'm a Christian," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So she said, "Yeah, you deal with people who talk to themselves and imagine things that are not there." And I was like, "Yeah, just like Christian."
Just like
Really, she looked at me and she was like, well, not really." I was like, "Oh, can you explain the difference? You talk to things that aren't there. I talk to things that aren't there, but at least I know that they aren't there because I have a condition that confirms that they're not there." So
also,
like, we're going to talk. Go ahead.
Also, I'm just going to point out, in the DSM-5, being religious is not considered to be a mental illness. So, yes, sorry for cutting you off there. I'm just making it.
No problem.
Yeah, there is.
But it's like she was trying to like down me because of, you talk to yourself, or you deal with people who talk to themselves. And I took offense because, some of my patients, they can't help it.
Sure.
So I
that is inherently offensive.
Yeah.
What she said.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this idea of Christians kind of talking to themselves, I think, the way that we characterize it, we kind of make these comparisons to like paranoid schizophrenia, but really the way I see it, I think, in my opinion, it's more of like a group trance. What I mean by that is I think we're all sharing a narrative that is kind of developed in group. These things typically, they do happen on their own sometimes. People are like, "Oh, I'm talking to God," and they start their own thing, and some people go wild with it. But most people, when they're talking to God, they're doing it in church, or they're doing it to pray right before a meal, or maybe they're having a hard time, and it's a coping mechanism for them, and they talk, and
right. And I do believe that they feel like they're talking to someone, and but I just feel like, it's just something that makes them feel better to talk to someone of a higher power. So, but I don't feel that anymore.
Well, that's really interesting, Paul. That is super, super interesting. Like, I want to know where you're going from here, because it sounds like you're still figuring some stuff out. I would love in the future for you to call back and so we can figure out where you're going at. For now, I want to get to some other callers, but I do want to thank you for calling into the show today and sharing your experiences, because that is just, that is a very poignant story. If I could tell somebody, be like, "Yeah, I just prayed to God to do this thing, it didn't happen, so I just don't believe anymore." Like that will that will make people nervous when you tell stories like that, right? Because people are conditioned to respond as, well, you know, God doesn't answer all these kinds of prayers. You know, God works in his own time. God works in mysterious ways. You know, there's immediate gut reactions that people will have to that. And, you know, I imagine in some circles, that's going to be harder to talk about in your experiences because people are, like I said, conditioned to respond in certain ways. I got a note here that Discord is asking if we're going to do an after show. Yes, we are going to do an after show. So, yeah, if you want to come talk to us, if you don't feel like talking live on the show in front of everybody, yeah, come join us on the Discord. It's something that we've been doing after every single episode. It's been really cool. If you're watching live, you can check out the link in the description there. I'm sure somebody will have it in the chat if you haven't joined us already. I want to go ahead and try to wrap up these calls a little bit more so that we can get to some more people because I got at least 3 more people that I want to talk to before we get to the end of the show. So I'm just going to go ahead and get our next person on. I have no idea how to pronounce your name. Is this Oriax in Pennsylvania?
It's Oriax. How you doing?
Oriax.
Yes.
That's a cool name.
I like the name Oriax. Welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thanks. So, first of all, right, for Valentine's Day, I want to try a line on you, Dan. So I was going to say, hey, Dan, I think you're objectively handsome.
Yes. I love it. That is great. Thank you for that. Thank you so much.
He is.
It's the tie. It's the tie. Maybe I need to wear the tie more often. I don't know, but
yeah. Yeah. So I just want to say or just speak about the occult in general. So I was listening. I'm a fan of the show. I was listening. Someone was talking about tulpas and stuff, and I've studied the occult pretty heavily. So I can give a lot of interesting knowledge. Is there a particular thing that you'd want me to talk about? About the occult?
So my understanding of the occult is that, you know, like I'm thinking like this is my Wikipedia brain right here. It's like occult, disambiguation. Like there's a lot of things that have called themselves as part of the occult that, you know, maybe that you have knowledge of, maybe you don't. Are you talking about the history of like American occultism, maybe like pagan occultism, or just like, you know, like where have you been looking at?
Oh, geez. Like a lot of more left-hand path stuff, but I have more than that. But just even like philosophy, like chaos magic, alchemy.
All right, fuck it. Chaos magic. Yeah. I want to know more about chaos magic. Tell me what you know, because
that sounds pretty cool.
I'll tell you what. I don't know a lot about chaos magic, and I've been told in the past I am in fact a wizard. So if I want to up my wizarding game, I'm gonna have to learn some chaos magic. So please tell me more.
Yeah. So I use forms of chaos magic actually. So I do. This is something I do actually believe in.
Okay.
But yeah. So there's so the general philosophy is if you have any kind of spell or incantation or anything and it works for you and it works for someone else, it continues down this path and it gets shared in between usually occult circles and people that are in the know, quote unquote. There's like combat magic, right?
Wait, hold on. We got to explore this a little bit more. So like people get like talismans or something?
Are you talking about like D&D or something like that?
No,
because that sounds.
This is, no, people...
Sorry, it's a terrible joke.
Yeah, no, I know, but like, a lot of these circles, the people that explain these, they put them forward as if they really work or not, and they usually lead it up to the person who's reading it to discover if they work or not. So they kind of leave it up to being tested.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so just the practitioner just has to kind of figure out if it works for them, and if it works for them, they just kind of do it.
Yeah, and then they share it because like the whole idea is to keep sharing them if they work. And if they don't work, it kind of takes them out of the gene pool.
Okay, so like the peer review process here is just kind of all right. I did this thing and it kind of worked for me. See if somebody else, if it works for them. Like, is that kind of how you confirm if it's real or not?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I would say so.
Okay, well, what if I had like a lucky rabbit's foot and I was like, hey, I just got first place in fucking Mario Kart last night and I was walking my lucky rabbit foot. Like, would that count as chaos magic?
I think so. I think I maybe I'm missing a part of it. I think chaos magic is like it affects reality, or you have to do something. Like you have to take some kind of action for it to be chaos magic.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I guess that would be just like an enchanted item, I guess you could say.
Okay. Well, practitioners of chaos magic, because I know you all watch my program, please send me your talismans, charms, whatever you have, and we'll test it right here on the show. Whatever this object does,
Absolutely.
we'll see what we can do, because I want to practice chaos magic. I'll be honest with you. That's an ability I wish I could have. Nervardia obviously is already familiar with magic because she exists in a country that doesn't exist. So that's pretty magical in itself.
That is very magical.
I'll be honest with you. The occult isn't something I know a whole ton about besides the big stuff like Ouija boards and stuff like that. Do you know a whole lot about the occult, Nervardia?
Not a thing. I used to live in an area that was very new agey, but a lot of people wore pentagrams and things like that. But yeah, I don't know very much at all about the occult. I apologize, Ariax, for my ignorance. But yes, I don't know much about it at all.
Okay. Go ahead.
I got sucked into reading all this because I got in a cult, and then I got sucked in further to the occult to get out of the cult. Try explaining that again in another thing.
You got sucked into the occult, and the occult brought you out of the cult, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Wait, but you said you're a practitioner of chaos magic, right?
Yes.
Okay, so can you do some chaos magic like right now, or how does that process work? So,
from what I understand, it's something of where it does take time within the process. So even if I would do it now, there wouldn't be anything. But within some of the philosophy around it that I've read, it's kind of like, I think the person said it's the equivalent of especially if you want something done, sometimes it's better to not look at magic and just do it yourself and actually just do it instead of doing magic. Like if you want a sandwich, go get a sandwich. Don't sit there and state spells every single.
Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. What the fuck is the point of doing magic if I'm just gonna do the shit myself? If I am gonna practice some fucking chaos magic, I'm gonna make a fucking kick-ass sandwich with it. That's bullshit. I know. Fuck that.
No, it's curbing the exceptions. Like it's curbing what you expect to happen. You know. I don't know.
Okay, well, is there something we could do that we could set up tonight at least and figure out what the results are like next week or something? You gotta help me out here.
I have no idea off the top of my head.
Okay.
There's one that's like is something involving aggression. I'm not recalling exactly what it is, but it's something with like runes and stuff. I don't remember though. It's like I'm trying to remember. I haven't done this one, so that's why I'm kind of like.
What's some chaos magic that you've done? Let's talk about that.
Oh boy. I'm trying to think. I've been busy, so I haven't been doing magic.
Listen,
it's kind of
on
my list.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If I could do fucking magic, I'd dedicate that 40 hours a week. That's my full-time thing now. If I could do magic, I'm just saying, man. Like if that shit's real, that's it. I'm going to Hogwarts, motherfucker.
I wish there was a Hogwarts.
Maybe there is.
I think we all do.
I don't know. Point is, look, Ariax, here's what I want you to do for me. If you could do this for me. Look into some chaos magic and fuck it, combat magic. Okay, I'll do that too. Whatever works. And let's do something together. Let's make a magic spell or something. And that's awesome. That should be our project, because if that shit's real, I want to know if it's real, right? Obviously, I'm a little more on the skeptical side, okay? In case if that's not obvious to you, but
I'm aware.
But like if some witch or wizard or werewolf or I don't know, whatever's out there wants to come in and talk to me about this stuff, someone that's a bit more expert in their craft, right? I want to know because that would be a really cool thing to talk about. But until next time arrives, that's your assignment, okay? Let's try to make this
I'll
thing
call
happen.
back. I'll have a whole system. I'll try to explain it all.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks for calling in. And until next time, we're gonna figure out some fucking magic. All right, that's it. And I'm not talking, not the gathering either, because that's not. No, we're talking about the real deal. The real deal. Okay, none of this Dungeons and Dragons. I'm in. Let's go all in for the magic.
Sounds good.
Anyway, that was fun. Let's go to our last caller here tonight. I want to go to Aaron, calling from Seattle, Washington. Hey, Aaron, what's going on?
Hi, Dan.
Hey, what's going on?
Nervardia?
Yeah.
Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So I heard your calls with, I forget her name, but a few shows ago with someone talking about tulpas.
That was probably Laura from Arizona who was calling about her tulpa.
Yeah. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I've been listening to ACA shows for a while.
Nervardia is asking what a tulpa is. That's probably a good place to start. So
it is.
Well, Aaron, what would you say a tulpa is? Because I have a definition. Some people have tried to change that a little bit, but it's come up quite frequently on this program.
Yeah. So I don't entirely agree with what Laura was saying about them. I think she has a few beliefs about tulpas that don't line up with mine. So my definition would be it is an imaginary friend that you make on purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's what it is for a lot of people. I think depending on the cultures and stuff, it actually, that definition is going to change a little bit. It's kind of like religion. You know, it's going to be different in different places. But yeah, tulpas are like beings that are either created or exist prior to your knowledge of them that are recognized by kind of being in your head, essentially. Like they are mental beings that manifest within someone's mind that I guess only one person can see. I don't know of two people that have had the same tulpa or anything that have talked to them, right? It seems to be localized to one person per tulpa. But yeah, that's kind of the extent of it. It's like an imaginary friend, but for real though, would be like my Urban Dictionary definition of it. But anyway, Aaron, hopefully that's good for you, Aaron. What about tulpa specifically did you want to talk about?
Sort of. I kind of have a problem with the for real though.
Oh, for real? Okay. Well, that's editorializing on my part. But yeah.
Well, no, it's just because like a lot of people approach it with the idea that tulpas are like a thing that exists either like outside of their own head or as like a metaphysical concept.
Yes. Yeah.
I view it as purely psychological.
I do too.
Something that you're doing with your brain that not everyone necessarily does, but they could do if they wanted to. There's nothing magical about it.
Right. Yeah. That's my understanding as well.
Yeah, they were. Like, I don't think that they have the ability to think separately from your own brain. They can't know stuff you don't know. They can't think things without you being aware of it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I know a lot of people do believe that. I think Laura was saying that.
I think it's for some people, they seem to describe experiences that the tulpa is telling them something or doing something that they otherwise wouldn't have previously thought of. And that's what kind of makes the tulpa real to them. I don't know if that's an embodiment of their unconscious.
I sort of agree.
I that might be an embodiment of the unconscious. I mean, it's hard for us to even predict what our own brain is going to come up with sometimes. I don't think any one human is fully in control. You know, this idea of a libertarian free will, we've talked about this before, I'm not a fan of. We are, if not exclusively, definitely at least bound to the physical parts of ourselves that compromise, our thoughts and stuff. That's to me a material thing. But yeah, that's, in summation, I think tulpas are, a psychological phenomenon in of itself that people attribute other kind of properties to that just either aren't scientifically valid or, just unconfirmable in some way.
Yeah, I mean, until we get to the point where we can scan someone's brain to interpret what thoughts they're having, I don't know if there would be a way to confirm them. But
Or they're beings in the astral
nervous.
plane trying to communicate with us. I don't know, man.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I do think it's possible that if you try to make a tulpa, your subconscious can kind of influence it in ways that bypass your conscious thoughts.
Sure. I mean, when I go to sleep, there are dreams that happen to me all the time that are out of my control. You know, like there's parts of our brain that just kind of happen and do stuff like that. That element doesn't impress me as much. If someone were trying to argue with me that tulpas were a real thing and they're like, oh, but they kind of do things separate from me, like I would just be like, look, brains do stuff separately from what you think is you, like all the time, you know? But anyway, Aaron, I just want to know, Aaron, was there something specific about tulpas that you wanted to talk about in particular, or?
There were two things that I wanted to bring up.
Okay. That
I think kind of help put it in perspective and make it seem a bit less weird to people who might be skeptical about it. Mm-hmm. One is, has Eric made you play D&D yet?
No. And look,
no.
If it's going to happen, you're going to have to kidnap me. All right? That's not an invitation for anybody to kidnap me, by the way. I'm just putting it out there. And I'm a big man. You will not bring me down. All right? I have to be willing. I have to be consenting. And maybe it'll happen. We'll see. Maybe we should do like a cross-platform D&D episode where we just combine all the streams and it's just all of us at the table here. But no, people, I don't know. Maybe Patreon goal, right? Patreon goal someday. But anyway.
I'd pay for that.
Yeah.
But like, you're familiar with the concept of role playing, of pretending to be someone you're not?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Acting.
I'd say like making a tulpa is just the act of role playing so much that being this other person comes naturally to you almost as much as being yourself.
Okay. I'm trying to follow through with that. Yeah, I mean, like, it is...
Like, you're used to your own personality, but you have the ability to kind of pretend to be someone else and think, well, what would they do in this situation? What would they think in this situation? And if you do it with the same personality enough, it can come to you like really easily. You barely have to think about it.
Yeah. Like if I was to improv with you or Nervardia, like I'm some sort of, I don't know, ship captain or something, and you start asking me questions, I'm going to think like, oh, what would that, I mean, like, it's like kind of like what they do at Disney, I guess. You know, like you can go up to somebody and they're dressed as like Cinderella or something, and you can ask questions about the movie. And I'm sure a lot of that stuff is scripted, probably most of it. You know, with the kind of responses they have. But I'm sure they have to go off the cuff every once in a while and they kind of get into the role. So, yeah, I can see how a tulpa could be kind of an extension of that. That makes sense.
Mm. And that leads into the big thing that I wanted to say is that there have been like a relatively common thing where novelists who will write the same characters for long periods of time, they get to the point where they're so familiar with the personality of the character that they can kind of have conversations with them in their head in order to figure out like what the character would do in a certain situation. And I think that kind of, it puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
To say that like people end up making like kind of low grade tulpas on accident all the time.
Huh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, that's an interesting point to make, because my name Nervardia is not actually my name. My real name is Meredith. And Nervardia was actually a character in a book that I started writing when I was 10 years old. So in a way, I suppose you're kind of right in that sense.
You know, it's funny. My real name isn't Objectively either. You know, it's not. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, people.
Wow.
It's a surprise when it comes up, but it's, you know, it's true. But yeah, I guess if you're a writer of fiction, that kind of stuff can come naturally to you. Makes sense. Nervardia,
I mean, if you write the same character long enough.
Yeah, totally. I could definitely see that. I think Nervardia, you were wanting to say something a bit earlier.
I've forgotten what I was.
Was there a point you wanted to go? Okay. Yeah, tulpas are like some reason the tulpa phenomenon on Truth Wanted is just crazy. Everybody's just crazy about talking about the tulpas.
I first learned about them in like 2013.
Right.
And then I became an ACA listener like right afterwards. And I was like, oh, that's a weird thing for it to pop up from two different directions in my life at the same time.
Yeah, you know, like that's when I first, like, I can't remember what subreddit, but I remember reading about it on Reddit back in the day in like high school. I went to high school, but you know, in the 2010s, and like that was just kind of a thing, along with like Otherkin and some other stuff. Where kind of these like weird stuff was like first entering people's kind of mainstream consciousness. I think was kind of that era, and I think now more and more people are talking about it. I guess, and I guess there's still more to discover for folks. So yeah, there's always when you think you've seen it all, there's always something out there that's going to surprise you. So
yeah. I think most of the discoveries would probably come in the form of how it interacts with your subconscious and what can they actually do separate from your own conscious thought. That's an interesting thing to research because I'm sure there's limits.
Yeah, I mean, I know
that the human brain isn't very good at multitasking. We can't really have like two thoughts running off at the exact same time.
Well, we already know from experiments from split brain patients that there's at least kind of almost two people living in every person, based on, what we're reading from our brains and how the different halves of our brains kind of control different aspects of us, but also at the same time seem to have separate personalities. There's a great video by CGP Grey that talks about the kind of split brain stuff that I recommend people's first introduction to. And there's some other stuff like just watching stuff about that kind of stuff is fascinating because to me, it comes back to the idea of like a soul. People always talk to me about my soul and where it's going and stuff. And it's hard for me to imagine what a soul would be if I seem to be made of this kind of material stuff, especially if, my brain is a huge part of that. So I don't know. But that's kind of a side tangent. Anyway, Aaron, I want to thank you for bringing up tulpas yet again. I don't know when we'll stop talking about tulpas. I guess the next big thing that comes around, maybe we'll start. I want to talk to somebody who had an Otherkin experience or believe that, because I think that would be really cool. But until then, Aaron, thanks again.
I don't know anything about that, but I'd be interested in hearing it.
I'd be interested in hearing that too, because I don't know anybody personally. I've just seen, stuff online about it. But yeah, thanks again, Aaron, for calling into the show about that. And that is all of our calls for tonight. Nervardia, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Truth Wanted. Yeah, what did you think?
I had fun. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Well, cool. I am so glad that you got to be on here. And folks, you guys need to check her videos out, especially the one about the testes, because again, I learned some things about testes I didn't know. And it's good for us to know these things. You should know your own body.
It is good to know. Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to admit, the name Cremaster is an objectively awesome word.
That is just there's some new vocabulary I learned from that video, which is just pretty amazing. But anyway, where can people find your content and what you're up to these days?
Okay, so my channel name is Nervardia. I'm assuming it's been put in the chat somewhere. And I do a mixture of atheist content, science content, and the occasional snake video, because I have a little snake, little cute little guy. His name's Lucius, and he's a children's python. So yeah, as I said, I've got a fairly eclectic thing, but mainly aiming at science and atheism. That's my channel.
Cool.
And yeah, what else was I going to say?
You're on Twitter at Nervardia. I know that much.
Yep, that's me. I'm on Twitter at Nervardia. I have yet to set up other things like Instagram and Facebook, but I'm doing that because I'm like, I don't want to do it, but But you'll find me on Twitter at Nervardia as well.
Well, cool. Well, thanks again for joining this program. And this show is Truth Wanted, folks. You can find this show on YouTube. And if you're watching now, please like and subscribe to the program to see more awesome stuff like this. You might also be listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, wherever else you might get your podcasts from. If you want to get involved, there's a Truth Wanted Facebook group you can join, and you can find me on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan. And if you really want to help us out and show that this show is a show worth supporting, you should go to patreon.com/truthwanted and donate on there. I think it'd be really cool to help out. And remember, we have some merch, and I'm going to wear some of that merch next week. So definitely please check out what we got on that Teesprings store. And there's going to be links to that into the description as well. And I cannot forget, of course, this show would not happen every week if it weren't for the wonderful production crew in the back that helps make this thing happen. So thank you, crew in the back, for helping us. We got a bit of a skeleton crew almost tonight. Some people came in last minute because, again, it is Valentine's Day. I am so glad that people were calling. I was worried, like, are people going to call? Are people going to be out on dates? But internet, you've done your job. Thank you for helping out with making this show really cool and just a really fun episode tonight too. I really enjoyed tonight's show. We are going to go to Discord, so if you're watching this live, come join us on Discord where we're going to chat for a little bit. Until then, Nervardia, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up tonight?
Don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn. That's my sign off.
That's the sign off. I love it. Yes. So my sign off is, as always, remember to keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
No, you're done.